Cool. All right. Well, welcome to the podcast, Dave. It's nice
Hi.
to chat with you. I appreciate you taking the time to come and hang out and chat. I guess, before we start, maybe you could just give a little bit of an introduction as to who you are and what you do and all that good stuff.
So I'm Dave Gamble. I own DMGAudio.com. We make plugins for professional audio engineers. I've also got Odd Sound, which does the MTS ESP retuning thing, and I've spent the last 4.5 years working on Serum 2.
Damn. Yeah, I feel like out of all of the programmers I've talked to so far on this podcast, which includes most recently was Vodtech from Melda, and I've chatted with the Kilohertz guys, Steve, etc. But I feel like out of all of them, you're like the DSP guy. I feel like would you characterize yourself as that, or would you say that's not true?
I would definitely agree with you with the idea that I care very deeply about DSP, getting the maths right. Yeah, that's very important to me. And yeah, as much as possible, it's my primary concern.
So I want to talk about the Serum 2 stuff, but I also just kind of want to do a bit of a back dive on some of the stuff that you've done in the past.
Sure.
So before you started DMG, you worked with companies like Focusrite, Sonalksis, etc. Did those experiences shape your influence for when you started DMG? Was there certain things that and what were some of the things that you may have?
So Focusrite, I was maybe employee number 12 or something. Well, wait, how far do we go back? There's two Focusrites. There's the Rupert Neve Focusrite, and then there's the Phil Doddridge Focusrite. So it's the second Focusrite, the one that still exists, is the one that I joined. First Focusrite got acquired. I was there very early doors at Focusrite, and I was there to be the DSP guy. I was there to be the digital guy and do digital things. Now, at the time I joined Focusrite, the Focusrite offering was things like the Red Series, the ISAs. I don't know if you know any of these units.
These are sound cards, right? Or are they sound cards?
No, man. Have a look at the Red 3. You got a good shot on that?
Oh, yeah.
Look at this. It's milled aluminium.
Yeah.
Brushed. Beautiful, beautiful things.
That's a compressor, is it?
Focusrite, very much the culture was we should be making the finest things, right?
Okay. Yep.
And to that end, a lot of conversation around the office was about how do we make the finest things. The company had started doing the Platinum as sort of the Focusrite Platinum units. I don't know if I've got one in here. Yeah, something down there. Focusrite Platinum units as like a lower cost entry. There'd been the greens that were at a difficult price point, but the reds and the ISAs were known and loved. So I came in, and my first job was a plugin that nobody's ever heard of called the Forte Suite for Pro Tools TDM, which was we went through the attic, and I mean literally attic, to find the old schematics for the Focusrite Studio consoles to pull up the circuit diagrams for the ISA 110, which is the EQ. Actually, to be fair, we had those schematics around. But more interestingly, the 130, which was this Focusrite Dynamics module that was from the old Studio consoles. And then circuit model that. And to do that, Focusrite got Paul Neyrinck, which is a name you may or may not be familiar with.
I am not.
Paul is, you've heard of Pro Tools TDM, right?
Yep.
The TDM bit is Paul, right?
Okay, cool.
He's one of the grandfathers, you won't appreciate me saying that, fathers of modern digital audio. So he came over and sort of trained me up on the ways. And we had a lot of fun. But also, at Focusrite, in that time, anything you did, you tested, you measured. We had this old Audio Precision that cost more than my yearly salary. It was a piece of testing hardware. Nothing was considered. You couldn't consider anything done until you'd measured it and tested it. So there was very much an emphasis on like, you've actually got to know what it is you've made. You've got to prove it. It's got to be like real. For things we did, it was a good time. I had a lot of fun there. It was cool.
And you think because of that workplace sort of mentality of you have to test stuff, you have to get things right, you have to like run them through this expensive unit to figure out exactly, like prove exactly what you've done, that influenced you a lot for DMGAudio?
Yeah, the test first mentality I think is helpful. I mean, I feel like it's coming into something of a heyday at the moment. I mean, in terms of people are getting into, I mean, the number of videos with somebody running Plugin Doctor now. This is good. Do this. Yeah, measuring is good. It's so easy to fool yourself and fool your ears. And then another processor goes on the chain and something sounds weird and you're not sure why. And it turns out that, something went wrong earlier up the chain and now you've got to fix that. Measuring is good.
So in building plugins, how much do you rely on subjective listening tests versus objective measurements? And how do you reconcile the differences between the two? For example, if you test something and you're like, okay, that's exactly the same thing as what this old compressor is doing, but I don't know, some other version that I've made just actually sounds better to my ear. Do you decide to go with the one that's objectively the exact same as the old compressor, or do you go with the one that you personally like better? Or how do you reconcile that?
There's a couple of things to unpack there, but the short answer to the direct question is I cheat and give you the option. Right? That's my get out. Is like if I've got a button that will let you blend between the original compressor exactly as it is and something that actually sounds better, then why would I not want to give you that option? Right? But if I unpack a bit,
right.
How much do you blend between subjective and objective? Well, you can't do without either, right? They've both got to be there. If you're modeling a piece of hardware, then it's not even really necessarily worth doing subjective listening until you've got some objective confirmation that you're right. And should the subjective listening reveals any difference between the objective and your target, something's wrong with your objective measurement. Something's wrong with your measurement process. So then round the houses we go again. In terms of that's specific to modeling a piece of hardware, right? When it comes to designing more general purpose processors, you've got to spend a lot of time. You've got to collect source material. I mean, I've got recordings of just bits of audio, usually horrible bits of audio, that you can push through processors to see what they'll do to them and kind of get a feel for what your processor's achieving. You need to do a lot of subjective listening to make sure that the feel of using the thing is right. Steve and I have been using a lot of car analogies lately. We're doing a lot of car analogies, right? So there's going to be car analogies. Sorry, we're doing this. So it's got to go on the dyno. It's got to meet the specs, right? You've got to test that it actually does do the thing that it does. But also, for me, it should be as fun as possible to use, and it should be as quick and direct as possible to use. Now, I'm very naked to criticism on that subject because, what appeals to me or what I find good to use and what Damon finds good to use, not necessarily the same as somebody else. But still, here is the process. I think we sort of subconsciously reveal our biases in terms of you can see our subconscious biases in terms of usability, in terms of who ends up using our stuff. So mastering engineers, ubiquity in post, computer game sound design, all that kind of stuff. We're there a lot. we're sort of everywhere there. So I think, maybe we tend to design for people with jobs and deadlines that have to get done. Obviously, we're a very small fish in the sea of EQs and compressors against the big shark that is the obvious leader. And I think their design is fantastic, but that doesn't mean I wouldn't change anything. And that means that for most people, I'm just wrong. So, it's about your design. It's about who you're designing for, what you're trying to do. But that answer?
I was watching some videos last night on your 100%. I was watching some videos last night on your YouTube channel about how you actually model like circuits in real time, and you mentioned something called SPICE simulation. Can you explain what that is? Is this a thing that you made up, or is this a thing that exists? Like that's like a real thing?
And talking about SPICE specifically, that word is a very loose description of what's actually going on. Okay. So SPICE specifically was a piece of software written in the 1970s at Berkeley University, maybe. But it's come to be the lone word that one uses to describe circuit simulation based on a couple of principles. So the idea behind a SPICE simulation is that to simulate a piece of circuitry, you should have a list of what's in the box, description of how they're all connected into each other, descriptions of what those things in the box are, and nothing else. And then from that description, it is possible to then just run the electronics and go, well, what does this do then? Because the physics of it, the physical assumptions being made is that current doesn't appear or disappear. And that's, true. So if current's going somewhere, you missed a component or a wire or something. But for modeling my favorite nightmare, the 1176 over there, I have a text file, and in the text file is a list of all of the components. And there is a number assigned to each node that they're connected to. And from there, we can put an input voltage at one of the nodes, and we can measure an output voltage at another of the nodes. And if you've got all the right components and you've connected them right and your descriptions of the components are right, then you have a description of what the unit's doing.
And how do you represent that in code?
So it's hard to answer that because I want to give you a really nerdy answer, and that might not be the most interesting. But I'm going to anyway. So the solution is a method called modified nodal analysis. And the idea is that you can create a matrix, which is a grid of numbers. And at any given time, it's a formulation of a matrix, and every component has maybe it's 2 pins on the component. And that gives you 4 entries, 4 number boxes that you fill in. So you literally have a bit of code that goes, well, this is in this row, this is on this node, so I need this row and this column, this row and this column. There are my four nodes that are affected by the 2 pins. Okay, what resistance are they admitting? Okay, and what current are they generating? And you put these things in, and it just turns the whole thing into a mathematical problem. That is solvable. And SPICE, the software at Berkeley University, was one of the first bits of software to really do this, and that's sort of why it got the name. But the principle is a fairly standardized principle. I mean, by and large, analog circuitry is designed using SPICE, or a derivative thereof. If you've got some program for laying out your circuit diagrams, for instance, it's almost certainly going to be the case that there's a button on there that goes simulate, and run that, and you test that it does what you think it does. It's the way that we do things. Is the way things are done in electronic engineering. broadly, because rather than actually having to get up and getting a soldering iron, which means going to the next room, you can just type and test. So yeah, computer-aided design for circuitry, SPICE, modified nodal analysis is just kind of the mainstay in actual electronic engineering, and it's sort of taken a weirdly long time to come to pro audio. That's in no way to suggest that I'm the first person to do it. I mean, UA have been doing this for years, and you know, it's the right approach by and large, because then you've mathematized your problem, and hopefully you've got an exact representation of what it is you're trying to solve, rather than looking at things heuristically and trying to do guesswork, which, you know, is fine and all. But yeah, you've got a lot less working to check. But once you've got...
And what are the numbers? Oh, sorry, go on.
Oh, once you've got it in some kind of M&A formulation, that's going to be really slow to run. So then you start looking into, you kind of put your numerical analysis hat on and you go, well, okay, how do I simplify this and how do I make this run faster? And are there bits of this I can pre-compute without loss of accuracy? Are there bits that really just aren't doing anything? So, for instance, an obvious example is when you're building a bit of analog circuitry, there's a whole bunch of capacitors that you have to put in so that you don't inadvertently pick up radio frequencies. That's not going to happen in the box. So that's the component you don't need to worry about. Of course, you test that and prove it. You know, you check that taking it out doesn't affect the numbers. But the reason it's there on the circuit board pertains to something that doesn't apply in a radio silent environment, like a circuit simulation on a computer.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sorry. And what are the numbers? Yeah, I was going to ask, what do the numbers in the matrix represent? Are they just sort of abstractions of values that resistors have and capacitors have, or is there like actual one-to-one numbers in this matrix that are representing an actual thing in the, like, yeah, I just don't really understand that part, I guess.
They are. We're going to get even nerdier. I'm so sorry. Okay, so for the sake of not being
that's what we're here for.
For the sake of not being too long-winded, I've simplified somewhat. There's a matrix and there's two vectors, right? So you've got a big grid, big square grid, and then you've got one list and you've got another list. So this list here over here, this is voltages, right, which are the input voltages that you would measure with a multimeter. And these are what you actually go into the world and test, generally, because that's the easiest thing to do. It's a column of the voltages at every node in your circuit. That one there, that's the one for the input. So that's the input voltage. You put that in. You chose that. This one here, it's some node between a couple of components. This one here is between blah, blah, blah. That one there at the bottom, that's the output one. That's the one that we want to actually connect to the jack socket on the back. We'll take that one. The matrix, no, I'm going to skip that. Another vector is your currents, which is, am I even lying? I might be. No, I don't think I am. Yeah, you've got a vector of currents, which is current that's going into a node, almost always by virtue of there being some nonlinear element in there, like a diode or a transistor. These are measured in amps. It's a table of amps. Cool. And it's what's being squirted in at this moment by that diode or that transistor. And your big matrix is a matrix of admittance, which is resistance in ohms, 1 over that. So, you know, here's a 10 ohm resistor. So in the matrix, you put 1 over 10 in that square.
We got the thumb.
That's it. That's it. It's the whole thing.
Gotcha. Damn. It seems like it would take a long time of like measuring components and having to input them into a giant grid.
Yeah, don't remind me about it. Yeah, welcome to my life.
Sure.
Now, I mean, to be fair, you automate the process of putting them into the matrix because you've got a list, and the list directly translates to where in the matrix things going. But you still got to type in that list, and you're looking at a circuit board, and you're looking at the schematics. These two are not necessarily the same thing. And and then there's that little bodge wire on the circuit board that's not there on the schematics. And then this resistor on the circuit board, which is meant to measure 42 ohms, actually measures 40 ohms. And now you're DC blocking frequencies off. Better fix that. So, so much measuring. You end up acquiring little tools to make your life easier for measuring things. So there's actually a little UK company called Peak Electronics that make these wonderful little tools for you just clip them onto a resistor, read your resistance value, clip it onto a capacitor, reads capacitor value, clip it onto an inductor, measures capacitor value, clip it onto a diode, it tells you the coefficients of the diode. Yeah. A lot of that, though. A lot of time. But that isn't even the worst of it. The worst of it is getting it to run fast, honestly. It's super cool, that first bit when you've typed the list in, you put audio in, and like it comes out doing what the unit does. You're like, well, that's wild. I've glossed over a whole bunch of details, by the way, because like it's true that that's one over ohms, but there's some more going on. All your nonlinear components come in a really fruity way, but and then go on. You're giving me a platform. I'm going to do my whinge, and then it turns out that your descriptions of some of the components just aren't even true at all. So my big story, my big public embarrassment for me was with track comp 1176, the FET in there. So there's field effect transistor. There's actually two of them, but there's one that's right in the signal path. It's a little field effect transistor. It's just a little transistor. Don't do much, does it? What does that do? Well, it's got some equations that describe. What current it squirts out, depending on what voltages there are. Okay, cool. That sounds simple. And then you go through the literature and it's like, well, what are those equations? Oh, pretty simple equations. It's going to be fine. So you go to the data sheet and you go, right. So what are the coefficients for these equations? You get them and you're like, wow, shit, that does it. Cool. Right. That sounds right. And then someone pokes it a little bit and goes, I can make this sound wrong. And you're like, oh boy. And we completely missed it. So I had to take the FET out and start measuring it myself against what the data sheet said the thing did. Lies, man, lies. Just that the data sheet description of this component were not accurate. So yeah, you can really go down rabbit holes. And I spent about 3 months just banging my head against a wall with this FET to get it spot on, which is longer than I should have spent. But I was still learning. And now I know, trust nothing. I spent 2.5 weeks of that 3 months going, yeah, but it must be what the data sheet says. No.
It just wasn't.
Measuring things is good. Wow. Resistors are resistors. Capacitors are capacitors, sometimes with a little bit of resistor thrown in. Diodes are diodes. FETs are not FETs. FETs are their own world. But
I got to imagine. I was going to say, so you write all this code that tries to accurately simulate an analog circuit in real time on a computer, but analog circuits behave in like really complex and nonlinear ways, and so emulating these circuits involves solving equations thousands of times per second, which I got to imagine runs up against your computing power pretty quickly. So what are some of the things that you do to try and solve this?
That's a super nerdy question. So, all right. So your starting point is you've got a description which objectively and subjectively is matching the hardware, right? But it's incredibly slow. That's your starting point. You want to do exactly the same thing, but have it fast. So you've got to do an analysis of what it's actually doing to solve that problem, right? Like what actual instructions is it executing in order to do this? Are there calculations, maybe, fingers crossed, that are being repeated? Could we pre-compute those? Could we work this out ahead of time? Could it be, for instance, that only when the user changes the knob, we can recalculate a block of numbers and that'll simplify things? Could it be that there's a whole block of components that you can effectively simplify into a smaller model and thereby save a lot of calculation? And the answer very often turns out to be yes. So let's go back to the 1176. So when I started out, top of my head, this is years ago, I'm going to get it wrong. I remember there being something like 50 nodes, 50 points where different components meet on the board, something like that. So I've got this 50 by 50 matrix, and that hurts. And then you go through and you start doing a bit of algebra and a bit of thinking, and eventually you get that number down, right, by doing little translations, building little components. So there's like a big lump of the side chain where you've got a whole bunch of components, but you can effectively pre-compute or sort of condense your description. You can calculate more efficiently a whole block of that stuff because it's well behaved in a certain sense. So now you've got rid of all of the internal nodes there. Whoop! And that number came down. And I remember when I was first doing it, I had my N. N is the description for the number of rows and columns in the matrix. And I was I had my N number. And when I was working on it, everybody was like, so how's N? And it was like, it started out 58. And then there was a point where I got down to 37. And I was like, yes, he's going great. And then, essentially you start building more and more esoteric virtual electronic components that describe little clutches of things. To get the effective number of nodes down and down and down. And it eventually got down to single digits after lots and lots and lots of work, which was just heavily algebraic. And I couldn't explain to you what it meant beyond this is just a simplification of the same maths. This is the same equation. And when your N gets low enough, you can run that boy in real time, nice and fast, and everybody's happy and everything's great. Yeah.
And how do you make sure that when you take these groupings of, say, components and you whittle them down into smaller models, that they retain the same behaviors that they had before you did that?
Phase cancel. Yeah.
So you just test the phase, and if it cancels out, it's the same.
Yeah. So like literally. So when I was doing this, I think it was an i7 MacBook Pro, right? Every time I made a change, right, and tested something, I had to run the thing that would compare the version that I changed it to against a reference, right? And it had to be bit exact. Yeah. So I knew if I'd done the calculation correctly, then it should phase count. It should be exact, not a single bit out of place, right? If I've done the maths, if I've simplified it properly, it's spot on. Every time I ran it, my CPU would spin up, and the fans would spin up, and the CPU would get real hot. And I used to do this sitting in a chair, like a deck chair, with my laptop. And I actually have like hairs burnt off my legs from the bottom of my MacBook Pro.
Oh shit!
From running phase cancel tests on attempting to simplify components. I mean, I won't show you, but take my word for it.
I believe you. Is there any particular piece of analog gear that you've attempted to model, but you had to abandon it because the current DSP technologies just were not powerful enough?
Nope.
Nice.
No, you can get into trouble where you've got a component that you don't have a good description for, and then you find yourself building something like this, which this is a 1 kilovolt valve tester. So that will generate a kilovolt.
Oh, shit.
And when I was testing and calibrating that, I had to have someone standing next to me to kick me in case it electrocuted me. Yeah, it was fun. But yeah, you can have all kinds of fun. You can run out of components, but yeah, if you measure them, you're good. Which is what we did for Serum 2, incidentally. There's a whole bunch of I'm going to get my box of goodies. There's a whole bunch of interesting chips that get used in filter circuits. And here's some transistors with spikes soldered on so I can attach to them. I've just got a bunch of chips, and I rented something called a source measure unit, which is like imagine the AD and DAC that God would use. That I rented that, and it was awesome. And so went through and measured boxes of different chips and to work out exactly what it is that they do, because you don't have component description for those things. Like that old silicon, who knows what that stuff does? You just got to test it and measure it. So we did. And
you did all of this testing on these chips for Serum 2 specifically?
That box, yeah, that's the Serum 2 filters box.
Oh, I got you. So I guess, yeah, what parts of Serum 2 were you responsible for? Let's get into that, I guess.
That's a difficult question to answer, because the answer is sort of kind of code isn't really so much like a building with different wings. It's kind of everything's a bit everywhere. Working on the code base directly is there's me, Ollie, Nix, Steve, and then Lance doing GUI bits here and there. So the code base started with Steve's Serum 1 code. And then we spent about 2 years, and the we there is me and Steve and Ollie refactoring the code base so that it had the modularity we were going to need to build Serum 2. Because you can do things like change oscillator types, because we wanted to be flexible about the number of LFOs, and because we wanted to be able to add stuff in, we needed modularity to it. So that was the first thing that we did. We pretty much got something working. Then we got Nix to come on board. Nix then cleaned up all of our work massively. And yeah, so I was there in the refactoring bit. I mean, the Serum 2 process started in a silly way. Did Steve tell you about how it began? Mr. Bill? Did Steve tell you how Serum 2 started?
Yeah.
No?
Oh, no, he didn't. Sorry, your internet was cut out there for a sec, so I didn't hear the question. He did not tell me how Serum started.
Right, so I'm going to tell you the story because I think it's silly, but also because I like the story. So we'd just done the odd sound microtonal retuning stuff, and that was coming out for launch. And part of that project was begging, pleading, and coercing as many developers as possible to integrate our little library into their plugins, so that then their plugins would support microtuning. And so I hit up Steve because I'd known him from years before when I helped him do the Pro Tools version of Serum. Threw him some code for that. I hit him up and asked whether I could beg, plead, encourage, somehow get his permission to have the odd sound code put into Serum 2, into Serum. And he said, yeah, sure, but right now Apple Silicon's driving me mad. I hate this. And I'm like, hey, look, cool. I'll fix the Apple Silicon stuff for you. That's not a problem. Like I did all the DMGAudio plugins three months ago. I got this, fam. I got you. He's like, hey, look, if you put that in, if you fix that, you can totally put the MTS thing in. And I'm like, wicked, cool. Yep, yes, please. And so he sends me the code for Serum, and I fix the Apple Silicon stuff. And he's like, hey, it works. And I put the MTS ESP stuff in. He's like, hey, it works. It's like, cool. But then, do you ever get that thing where something's like you kind of want to like clean it? Do you ever get a thing where like you just go and you look in a drawer and you're like, I could make this drawer neater? No, maybe.
Oh yeah, 100%. I get that with Ableton projects a lot. Yeah.
So I just kind of started like looking at Serum, and I was like, I could make this easier to get around a bit, like easier to navigate the code base. I could make this like tidier and neater and smarter. And I was like, Steve, do you mind if I just... So I just started, spring cleaning the code just because it was really pleasing to do so. It was just really satisfying to do. And Steve was sort of watching on, being like, don't know what's wrong with your brain. Why are you doing this? And I'm like, this is fun. Leave me to it. Anyway, after a little while, he was like, this is great. Do you want to keep on doing this? And I was like, yeah, sure. And he started, he sent me some Lego sets as a thank you, which was lovely. And we just carried on like that. And after a while, he was like, Dave, can we do CM too? I'm like, probably. So then I chatted to Ollie and Damon, and they said yes, and then it was a thing. And then we just all got our heads down and worked a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it turned out really good. Like the work paid off, I think.
Thank you. I'm really proud of it. I think it's a wonderful thing. I think it's good. And I think there will be great music that comes of it. There's all kinds of trickery that you can pull off in there that like even we haven't figured out yet. I'm excited to see what people make with it.
Mm. Yeah, once people like figure out the meta for it, kind of like they did with Serum 1. Like Serum 1 came out and there was like a few years where people were using it, but they hadn't really figured out the meta. And then in like, I don't know, 2018, 2019, like everyone just figured out the meta game for Serum, and it became like this thing that you can make anything in, kind of. I feel like that'll happen for Serum 2 as well, for sure. Had a lot to do with Virtualrite and AU5, I think. With Serum 1 at least.
Yeah, good on them. I'm excited to see. There's definitely some interesting new toys to play with in Serum 2. Often I think there's some subtle stuff in there that's interesting, like the consequences of like having Warp 2. They're really odd. Are you familiar with the EMS VCS3?
Is that a piece of hardware?
Tell me when it's in shot.
Oh yeah, I got it. Yeah, so it's a synth.
It's the synth that was used for the Doctor Who soundtrack. Well, what's interesting about
cool.
It's an old British synth. But what's interesting about it is it's got the patch bay. You see the little spiky boys at the bottom.
Yeah.
So what you can do with that, right, is that's your modulation matrix. So the idea is, of course, you route control signals to control inputs and signals to signal inputs, except that it doesn't make any distinction between the two, right? There's no bit of tape to stop you just sending signal to control inputs and vice versa. Awesome. So you can get the thing to really dance and make some, like, just legitimately chaotic stuff. It's really weird what it can do. And so we wanted that in Serum, right? It's like, well, why can't I FM to that oscillator, and then back again? Well, you can now.
Yeah, I noticed that you can just right-click stuff and modulate the filter cutoff from any oscillator you want. And yeah, it's insane. I feel like that has opened up a whole other world of possibilities in there. Going back to that box that you had of all of those chips that you measured for the filters in Serum, did any of those have anything to do with the acid filter in Serum 2?
Yes and no. Yes. But also no. Yes, so the acid filter has... So the acid filter is actually comparatively well behaved in a certain sense, But
that is definitely my favorite filter in Serum 2. I feel like it's the fattest one, the
I'm
juiciest
glad.
one.
So yeah. So those ladder filters were a Skunkworks project. They were not on the spec, but I sort of had this slightly weird idea. So there's some papers by Tim Stinchcombe, who you've probably never heard of, but he's fantastic. He's a genius, and he did these analyses of like the Moog filter, the 303 filter, the EMS filter, because he was like, look, these are all ladder filters. These are all like people ripping off the Moog design, and like here's how they got away from Moog suing them for the patents and blah blah blah. He wrote this interesting set of papers on analysing the effective frequency responses of these different ladder filters. Really cool paper, really liked it. And I thought, wouldn't it be good if these could like have a perfect implementation? Is there a way that these could be implemented perfectly? It's like, okay, what would that be? So in the paper, well, wait, actually, let me go back a bit. I did a full circuit model of the 303. And all nonlinearity, everything considered. And I remember I'd got it running, and I was chatting to Steve, and I was like, Steve, I can't make this distort. Steve, I can't get it to distort. And I was like, why doesn't it distort? So interesting thing about the 303 filter is the 303 filter has this massive gain drop before the filter, right? Inside the 303, inside the unit. Massive gain drop before the filter. Then we hit the filter. There is no way in a 303 to get enough level in to get any like real harmonics out of the filter. After the filter, however, we go to the VCA. There, things get spicy. That's when we get the distortion. That's when we get the vibe. But the filter itself is not internally distorting, which was a shock to me. So I put that down, and I was like, is it really worth spending the CPU on this? Is there a better way I could do this? So then I'd got that Tim Stinchcombe paper, and I was thinking about that because that's got the same filter in. And it's like, well, look, if a linear model is accurate, can I do this better? The answer is, well, yeah, okay. So it's, let's get this right. So it's 24 dB per octave. So it's a fourth order filter. Okay. I can compute the coefficients for the filter perfectly linear pretty easily. I've got a fourth order filter. Can I factor that into two quadratics? Yep. Yeah, I can. What's the numerical behavior of that? Pretty well behaved. Okay, cool. So now I've got two low pass filters with different frequencies and resonances, but I've split it, right, into two in series. What would be the perfect implementation for that? And then we get the Sam Wishnick paper. Sam Wishnick at Isotope writes this paper where he's been basically playing with time variant filters. So that is, you've got a filter and you want to swish the frequency around as fast as humanly possible, but you don't want it to go pop. Normally, if you do a regular, what we call direct form implementation of a filter, swish it around fast enough, it goes pop. Wishnick went through all of the possible options and was like, it's this one. I'm like, bruv, you're a winner. So, yeah, I took the Stinchcombe paper, put it through a bit of numerical analysis, fed that onto the to Wishnick's recommendation of the it's a time variant state variable filter. Boy, does it sound good! Yeah, but then you've got to go through that VCA. Without the model of the VCA at the end, it does not sound right. So yeah, one of these is a 303 VCA. I'd need to turn a light on to read the text and show you which chip it is. But yeah, that went into a source measure unit which gave us the transfer function for that. Yeah, I like it. And that was way more than you ever wanted to know about.
That had something to do with the acid filter in Serum?
Sorry?
No, I find
exactly
I find this shit endlessly interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
How do you manage your attention and your productivity when developing complex projects, given the potential for infinite adjustments and feature creep?
Poorly.
True.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned
it's hard, isn't it?
One of the,
sorry.
Well, I was going to say, I think it was on one of those videos I watched on your YouTube channel. You mentioned that you took an intense week-long retreat with Krzysztof, the other dude from DMG, to rapidly develop multiplicity. Is that typical for your workflow, or is that something you just did for multiplicity?
Something we just did for multiplicity. I think it worked really well. I'm up for doing it again. It's not so much fun being away from my son and my wife, and so that's not so good. But you do get a lot done in that time. It's a balance thing, isn't it? But that was a fun week, and multiplicity came out of it, and I like multiplicity. I like it a lot.
I've used the demo, and I agree. It's very good. I unfortunately don't own it, but I know a lot of mastering people talk highly of it. Like Bob Mack, for instance, talks very highly of it.
He's a hero. Yes.
How do you? Yeah, Bob is insane. I've had him on this podcast too. He's a really, really knowledgeable dude as well. How do you view the role of machine learning in audio plugins? Do you think these technologies will genuinely transform real-time audio processing, or do you think that they're currently more just hyped up and that they won't actually be the new norm for real-time audio processing?
I think I can say confidently that they're hyped up compared to what I think. It's just generally true that AI is sort of a buzzword right now. What 100%, what impact it has remains to be seen. I don't know. I mean, as we've talked about, I'm from the old school world of mixing desks and rack gear and plugins that try to do a particular thing in the perfect way. So it's an interesting space. We'll have to see with it. I mean, I've heard some AI generated music that made me giggle, but I think maybe the thing that made me giggle was more than the music itself, the original script that prompted it. We'll have to see. It's not obvious to me what problem it's solving, but hey, maybe there's a thing. But I've got a thing that I'm good at that's like my corner of the world. I should stick to doing the things I'm good at, and whoever's really good at machine learning, they should be the person that figures out how machine learning applies to audio. And I wish them great success with that. But it's just kind of adjacent to me. I don't really know.
Has there ever been like a specific area in DSP or audio plugin development where you've considered employing machine learning to tackle a difficult problem, or is that not something that's ever crossed your mind?
I can give you the weirdest answer to this. So,
go for it.
Okay, so machine learning, right? So machine learning, you've got some kind of neural network, yeah? And you're training this neural network up. The sort of the granddaddy of neural networks is the 3-layer perceptron, which is like kind of a standard equation, standard way of building a neural network. While I was at Focusrite, I started a PhD part-time, which I sadly never finished. But what I was working on was the analysis and synthesis of nonlinear audio devices. That is, you've got a black box, you want to push some magic signal into it and capture the magic pixie that lives inside by recording the output, and then be able to play it back again, right? So maybe you might have captured an EQ using an impulse response, but suppose you want to do that non-linear. So you might have seen Nebula. You're familiar with the acoustical audio stuff?
Nebula. I am
Acoustica?
not.
They make some plugins
No, I'm
based
not
on.
familiar.
Oh, so they're like they're reproductions of bits of hardware based on measurements of the hardware by putting a test signal through. That's based on a method called nonlinear convolution by the tragically late Angelo Farina, who we lost recently. The liquid channel, Focusrite liquid channel, used a method called dynamic convolution.
I know about that, yeah.
Where you pop little signals into a unit and measure it. So that was the sort of field I was in. And looking into it, the maths is super interesting of being able to kind of analyze, classify any device, to measure a device fully. Really interesting place of maths. And the place where I ended up as mathematically the most solid way of doing it is some work by the mathematician Norbert Wiener from about the 50s, where he comes up with this structure which you push white noise into a device, you measure the output, and you use that information to propagate numbers into this structure. And this structure is a neural network. This structure is a slightly generalized form of a neural network. So yes, there's a learning algorithm and everything. It's nowadays we would describe the Wiener functional approach as a form of machine learning. I think when you look at it from the perspective of I'm putting noise through a box and recording the output, it maybe doesn't quite feel as machine learning-y, but under the hood, that is a neural network doing what a neural network does in the way that a neural network does it. So yes, I have, just not in a way that really makes any kind of intuitive sense.
Gotcha. I got a couple extra questions I want to ask you before we wrap up. One of them is there a dream project or challenge that you've always wanted to tackle but haven't had the opportunity to do yet, whether it's due to technical limitations, time, or market readiness, or something like that?
I do have a dream, which is to write an undergraduate level signal processing textbook with a heavy emphasis on intuitive approaches. I want to write a book that makes signal processing easier to understand than many of the problem is I'm not well qualified to do this. I'm not a great writer, and I have no experience as an educator, but it would be my dream to write a well-received textbook on signal processing. I think that would be a wonderful project to do. That. In terms of audio stuff, I'm very much looking forward to finishing my distortion plugin. It's called Warmth, and that's been just completely put on hold for Serum 2 stuff. But yeah, whilst developing it, it's not far off a state of good readiness. But whilst using it and trying it during the development process, I've been giggling like a child, just enjoying the crazy distortion that comes out of it. So I really like it. And, for that reason, I'm looking forward to finishing it. And, that's when we started Serum 2, I said to Steve, look, I'm going to put everything on hold. We're just going to do Serum 2. We're going to get it out the door. if I try and do something else interim, like things will drift. So we stopped that. We put that on hold. So I'm looking forward to getting back to that. Beyond that, I don't know. Yeah. There's more circuits I'd love to model. You learn something. You learn something weird and interesting about the physics, about the designer. There's all kinds of weird things you learn in modeling stuff. You're sort of treading somebody else's footsteps in a weird way. It feels kind of like being some kind of odd historian to sort of go through and see things. But yeah.
Yeah, it has that kind of like exploratory nature to it, it sounds like, which is the exact same thing I like about making music as well. It's like there's always something new to try. There's always some new rabbit hole to go down, which is the fun part for sure. I think what you just said answers my other question, but I'll ask it anyway. If you had unlimited time, resources, and talent, what would be your ultimate contribution or legacy to the music industry or the audio industry?
Oh, it's got to be the book, isn't it? I mean, it would be.
Yeah, that's what
it would be. Yeah. I like the plugins I've made, because I wouldn't release anything unless I actually liked it and believed in it. Like, I can't put out stuff that I don't feel good about. So yeah, I feel good about having put those out into the world, because I think they're good. I think they're useful. I think they give you access to things that you might not otherwise get access to. And like, this is it. A lot of the point behind the DMGAudio plugins is I don't make a plugin unless I've got like an actual reason to make a plugin. Like if I've got to find some kind of justification for it, like for instance, right when I started with equality, there were problems with like the top ends of EQs, and okay, on laptop speakers, hard to care, but if you're really listening to something, if you're paying attention, if it's going into another unit for processing later, you want that stuff to be right. And I had some maths that would sort that out, so that became a thing. Yeah, there's a story of the inception. There's a problem or a story behind each of the plugins that kind of justifies its creation. That at least to me convinces me that it's worth it existing. So yeah, I feel good about doing things because you're never alone when you've got a problem. So the problem that you find, somebody else has got too. And so, in that sense, it feels good to contribute. I mean, I don't imagine that the DMGAudio stuff will make anywhere near as big a dent in terms of legacy as something like Serum 2, which is, let's be honest, probably the most used synthesizer in the world, and will be for God only knows how long. Yeah, that's huge. But, yeah.
Awesome. Well, once again, thanks for coming on the podcast. It's been a pleasure to chat.
It's
really
been fun.
Interesting to pick your brain on some of these things. Yeah. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you very much.